right, great. We're live. Welcome back to Comics Cast. Finally got this thing up and running. We got How to Draw Comics with us today, so I'm very happy to say this little. All right, great. We're live. Welcome back to Comics Cast. Finally got this thing up and running. What's going on with my audio feedback? Just ignore me. This is my first time I've ever done
I saw that.
All right, we're
gonna
live.
happen.
I'm not talking to myself. I was watching the stream. All right, so yeah, we are live officially, and we got How to Draw Comics with us. Thank you guys very much. The head of the Hydra, Clayton, Ed, and Rick is here. So thanks for Gerald for coming back on. He's always running the Sunday show, bringing the indie comics with us. So this is all about talking about the Summer Slams, which is Ed Foychuk's baby. And it's what How to Draw Comics is really at its blood and core is all about. And Clayton created a wonderful space for all of us. I think I was talking to Rick about it earlier, about sort of like, it's the degrees of Kevin Bacon. You know, how far a degree are we separated from How to Draw Comics? No matter what you did, at some point, you are linked to How to Draw Comics, and that's a testament to Clayton and what you've created for the community. And this is just, in my opinion, even though I've only competed in one, this is like the best growing competition that's available on the internet right now for sequential building portfolio. So this is all about talking about the launch of the Sequential Summer Slam for 2022, the fourth year. So I'm gonna kind of toss this over to Ed a little bit, because, like I said, this is your baby. You've grown and developed this into something really special.
I have.
We're happy to
You've grown.
Yeah. You've had an alien baby, and now it's off killing everyone on its own and making new babies. So
Making new babies.
Making new babies.
Babies.
Okay, on that note, I guess I'll talk about this. Yeah, guys, this is going to be our fourth contest now. Fourth or fifth? Fourth, I'm pretty sure.
Fourth.
And
Well, Winter Slam would make it 5, I think.
No. We have had 3 Summer Slams and 1 Winter.
Yeah.
All right.
This is our fourth contest now, and they keep getting bigger and better in so many different ways. So I originally thought of this as something to kind of spur our community into some community action, right? Like, whereas we can give feedback to each other, encouragement to each other within the Facebook group, or other sections of websites and all of that stuff, right? For our students as well with howtodrawcomics.net, right? And I thought that this was a really good challenge. Now, I've run art contests before. For anybody who's been around the art scene for a long time, there's a website called Pencil Jack. Does anybody remember Pencil Jack? Any of you guys?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not old.
Okay, maybe Clayton does. Like, digital webbing and Pencil Jack were the places where artists were coming up in early 2000s and stuff like that, right? Like Mark Brooks, all these guys came from these websites, right? Yeah. And I used to host a contest on these websites called Pummel. I can't remember what that meant for, but basically we pummeled each other with our art, right? Like, there was an abbreviation. I can't remember the acronym. We sorted it out at one point. But every single month we would have these contests. And we had a tiered system. We had this whole thing with lightweights, middleweights, heavyweights. It was like this massive construct with over 100 competitors every single month. And it was like a full-time freaking job. I loved it, but moderating it, organizing it, and stuff like that was just massive for me, right, as an admin. And I learned a lot of lessons from that. I learned that dealing with artists, much like anybody who's tried to commission an artist or anything like that, or hire them for a book, is a little bit like herding cats, right? You might get 500 people committing, or 2 people commit, whatever it is, but slash 50% of that actually show up with a product, right? So what we did with this contest is just, instead of making like this sign up and a commitment and stuff like that, we put the onus on them as like, here's the deadline, here's the script, here are the rules, let's see which one of you bring it. And every single year we're impressed by the entries that people bring, right? Like, they really, they bring so much like professional work. But it's not just, we look at some of the top tier guys and we're like, damn, this is beyond publishable. This is like already ranked high in the professional world. But even looking at a lot of the beginners, seeing them progress, seeing some of the feedback they get when they post up the sketches and stuff I get, seeing them progress until they finally accomplish an entire page or even two of sequential art, everybody feels accomplished and like they did something by the end of this, right? So it's been great. I've been lucky to have a lot of these guys on judging panels with me and stuff.
Yeah.
I'm going to kind of hand it over to Clayton for a second here to talk about how he's felt with the judging and the entries and that type of thing.
All right.
Yeah. Well, firstly, thanks, Joe, for the amazing compliments that you gave both Ed and I, and also Rick, who's part of the HTDC team and has been for a long time. Those kind words, they mean a lot to us. And it's crazy to think that How to Draw Comics has had such an impact on so many people. It's actually not until the last few years when I really started to stream and put my face out there that I realized that, because people who I was meeting for the first time within the different communities within indie comics that are out there started telling me that How to Draw Comics was one of the first places they came to learn about this or that. So it's an amazing testament to what we've built. And it's wonderful that that resource is available to people. And then Ed stepped it up by giving us the Summer Slam, which actually allowed us to take some of those skills and put them into action, compete with one another, and to really test our mettle a little bit.
Right.
And so part of my experience as a judge with Ed and the other people that we bring into the fold during this competition, it's really amazing to see people putting their best foot forward, regardless of their level of skill. And people of all different levels of skill do actually put in their work. And what's amazing about it is it's not just a pinup, but it's actually sequential storytelling. So not only do you get to see the drawing abilities demonstrated from these artists, but you also get to see their storytelling abilities and the way in which they pace that narrative and set up each of the panels to create a sense of flow and energy throughout the page, the composition of the page itself, and the readability of it all. It's a completely different ball game and goes upon a very unique skill set that I think is specific to comic book artists. It's what sets us apart. And so it's a surreal experience to be able to not only provide that information, like I mentioned before, to people to get their skill set leveled up, but also to provoke them, to push them into putting it into practice and giving it purpose. And I think that that's probably one of the things that we all try to look for when it comes to online education, is not just having the knowledge, but actually having a purpose to it, because that can be one of the biggest motivating factors, is having that goal, like answering the question as to why we are putting all this time into honing our skill set. It can feel very ambiguous and arbitrary at times. Well, we just want to draw, but what exactly do we want to draw, and for what purpose are we drawing in the first place? And I think that the Summer Slam really does give up-and-coming comic book artists and even advanced comic book artists that extra boost of motivation and drive that they need to really assimilate all this information and make it a part of their process.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to just kind of tie in with that. One of the things that happens on the internet, what we all do, and I'm speaking for me as upcoming artists, so outside of Comics Cast, outside of HTDC, what we tend to do is we go, okay, how do we beat the algorithm? Well, it's Thor's coming out, so let's draw Thor, or let's draw whatever it is, and then say, hey, I'll hashtag that. Even if it's a detriment to your own indie characters or your own comics, or you're just learning how to draw. So a lot of sites, it's, let's do pinups, because pinups, their pinups may be gorgeous, or they may be just starting off, but at the end of the day, they're still pinups. So it doesn't help with your portfolio. I think a lot of people know this, but never want to take that extra step and say, okay, I'm going to do sequentials. They're harder. We got to get them done. And what's nice about this, and this kind of goes into lessons learned and developing, judging, and all that sort of stuff with being the fourth year, in the Summer Slams or the Sequential Slams, just to be general to get them all.
Yeah.
Is to say, this is not only do you have a chance to do it, but these judges with HTDC are going out of their way to look at everybody's work and make sure everybody gets feedback. So at the end of the day, you may get some different rewards here and there, and we'll kind of talk about the rewards later, but at least you're going to get some sort of feedback that should increase your knowledge and develop you. And then also that skill set that you would get from that feedback is something you would get at a con that you would wait line hours and hours and hours to get. So I think it's good, solid feedback. But Rick, I know you got your hand up. You're ready to say something.
Yeah, I'm going to just 1 second. I'm going to say what Joe said was spot on. And that's what I want Rick to talk about is how much feedback we give to people. And the truth is that's what they're here for, right? Like, yes, they like prizes. Yes, they like some exposure. But the videos that we as judges have recorded is just, it's not always as in perfect. Like there's going to be diverging opinions on certain pieces that we'll argue out a little bit like that, right? But Rick's been there through it all for judging and stuff, and it's just like, wow, we spend a lot of time on the feedback. And Rick, what do you think of that? The feedback?
Well, I mean, with the whole feedback, that's the most important thing for me, and it's always been, which both Ed and Clayton can attest to. I mean, at the first one, I took it upon myself that everyone that didn't get a critique from Clayton and Ed, and at that time it was only the first, the 5 winners that got the critique from you guys, I decided to take on the rest.
Yep.
And I regretted that for weeks after, because there was a lot of people, but I still get appreciation for it to this day from that first show. That's how I met Gerald. And I met Joe, and that's how I met Joe, because he was angry at me at how I critiqued Gerald.
Well, I don't remember it that way exactly, but
no.
I'm gonna have to say that.
Funny story, but that's how I met people, and I started to see, okay, people want this competition almost more for that than the competition, because we really didn't. Or the prizes, because we didn't really have many prizes in the first one, but it's still the one we had most contestants to this date.
Well, I think one of the things of the first one is it was one we did have prizes. Like, I don't know if you remember, but we had marker sets and stuff like that we're mailing out and stuff. But again, it wasn't the prizes that I think everybody was into.
Exactly.
I think the first one, to be frank, was the easiest one. What we did was it was a single page Spidey, right? Spidey was the first one.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean like the artwork looked the easiest. The artwork was off the hook for some of these entries and stuff like that, right?
Oh yeah.
But it being single page attracted a lot of people because they're like, everybody's scared to do it on this panel here. How many people have done an entire book, right? Much less books. It is daunting. It is draining. It is a full-time job for a very long time, right? So doing just one page is a lot to tackle. And I think that's why we had maybe, I want to say 80 entries. What do you think, Rick, for that first one?
Yeah, about 80.
Yeah. And I think and then when we look at it, when we started getting to double pages, we give the artist a lot more play, but the challenge is a lot tougher for them, right?
I believe it helped. Like, we went down to almost only 25 at the next one. 25, 30.
No, because we had some other entries and stuff. Yeah. So, we bumped above 30 or something like that. Yeah. Then the last one, we had maybe 45 or something along those lines, right? Yeah.
So there was, to your point, there was a big jump in one page and two, and we changed it. And we changed it maybe also a little too much, like made it a little too hard for some people. Not saying that it was too hard, but for some people to be able to feel like they could join, it was too hard. But That's what we've been doing. After all, we want to change things up to keep it interesting.
Well, do we want to talk about the newest one then a little bit to talk about sort of like the general idea and concept and focus, or do you want to wait until a little bit later?
Gerald was.
I was trying to move that over to being that segment, but you had to interrupt me and ruin the flow, Joe. Thank you.
Man, I'm sorry. You did be a well-oiled machine, Rick, but
I'm going to say that what I'm going to say actually will be a nice flow into into what Joe has written and what the script is going to be like. I'm going to have to say, as somebody who participated in the earlier ones and the last two, Winter and the last Summer Slam, I did not participate in. But I was always intrigued. I love what you guys are doing, and what I think that we're doing with this slam, with the script and how it's handled. I almost felt like the last Summer Slam, it was almost like too much freedom. It was like too much interpretation, and I think that freedom, although good, was very intimidating, and put a lot. I think it put a lot of pressure on people to actually think outside of the box, where they need to really kind of have a little bit more focus. Because in reality, I think if we ever went to like a portfolio review, I don't think we're ever going to get a dream script like Ed and Death, or not. It wouldn't be that open to interpretation. And it was the Black Widow one. I think that was the one that was really open to interpretation.
Everything.
And
you guys can go. You guys can correct me, but I think that generally that kind of script is something you would see once you've worked with Ed was. Let's say Ed's worked with somebody for 6 comic books. At some point, you're going to be shorthanded.
It would be more. It would be more of a collaboration at that point because you've proved yourself. Now, what I like about this one, because now we have that, and then we're going into this area. I think the next natural progression would have been the incorporation of, or at least the thoughtfulness of having dialogue, word bubbles, and I think that's what was really. That was like the next step I thought that should have been in the next slam, because we've gone to like this open interpretation where there's no dialogue. You just need to think about telling a good sequential story with panels. But now what happens is that I think that we've got tremendous talent that have come out there with some really just professional level quality. But I think what was happening is that every panel was just like this great action pinup. It was like, and it told a great story, but there was like no room for any dialogue. And now we have this tighter script, and it's not mandatory that you have to letter or do word bubbles, but you have to be aware of it. And I think that's what's really cool about this particular challenge. Reading what Joe wrote and what you guys all put together here, it has that opportunity. Lettering is optional, but now it forces us as sequential storytellers to think the whole thing. It's not only just coming up with great panels, leading your eye, coming up with great composition, but now the true nature of sequential storytelling is there's going to be dialogue boxes. You should be able to read it without the word bubbles, but that's a reality of what you need to do. And so that's why I think this one, I think we're going to go talk about it now. We're going to talk about this fantastic script that we have, but you have to, it's going to force all our entrants to really think about where those word bubbles are going to be. So
if I can, average script.
Before I get into Joe's script here, because I think that it's important. This is what we're here for, right? Is to talk about our newest thing. I want to explain just a little bit how we led up to this with the different entries and stuff, right? Yeah. Because, for example, the one with Black Widow, the challenge that we had, there was no dialogue at all. That was intentional. If you guys remember 1989 or somewhere around there, G.I. Joe put out an issue with Snake Eyes, and it was just a dialogue-free issue, right?
Marvel did that as well.
What's that?
Yeah, it was silent interlude.
Marvel did that for a month, like some years ago as well, where every comic they made that month had no dialogue.
But that's going where Ed is going. It's physical communication is key.
Right, and I wanted to just have that. Like, I wanted to do that. So if you look at all the different challenges, we had challenges where we were explaining every panel. We had challenges where we explained the first and the last panel, and then they could fill in the middle. We've had challenges with dialogue. We've had challenges with no dialogue. This one, though, Gerald's right. Like, this one is dialogue driven in that there's an entire page, and Joe's going to get into why he did certain things this way and stuff. But I love it. And this is just like with our students in how to draw comics and stuff. We want to not only give like sporadic challenges, but give a progression of challenges, right? And that's, I think, what we're trying to do here is that now we're looking at it and say, okay, well, as Gerald said, you're going to have space. You're going to have to leave room for this amount of wordage, right? And like whether you add it in or not, if our judges are then reading it and we're saying, well, where the hell would it be added? And if we have to question that, points taken and stuff like that, right? So we actually, I think I was looking at how many challenges we've done, and we've done four.
We forgot one. We forgot to mention one. We forgot to mention the turtles. Yeah.
So our first one was Spider-Man, and we'll do a review in just a little bit. I'm just looking back on my screen here. Spider-Man, X-Men, Black Widow,
and then Turtles.
So this is going to be our fifth sequential challenge now, right? And what's the title of this challenge, Joe?
Sequential Summer Slam?
Love and hunger. Love and hunger.
You're talking about the full thing?
There you go.
Love and hunger.
It's the love and hunger one, right?
Yeah,
Love and hunger. I love it. To you, Joe. He's giving it to you right there.
No, it was a toss. It was a toss.
Yeah. And you didn't catch it.
A really good quarterback. I was never a good receiver, you see.
Okay. So tell us a little bit about the script then, Joe.
All right. So I think we all sort of came together, and everybody was sort of just ready to tackle whatever came up. And I was like, well, I'll just write the script. That's easy. I'm not really going to do a lot.
Talk about how we came together.
Yeah, Ed, do you want to talk more about that? I mean, you put the bat signal out there, and we all were like, yeah, of course we're going to help. Like, that's easy.
I think I mentioned it before.
It's a good story.
Yeah.
Is it? I don't even know the story now. I was like,
it's like there's a story.
I've been super stressed, and I've been launching products, and I just looked around and I said, and this, I don't even think maybe Clayton knows a better story than I do, but I was really stressed, and I was like, I cannot do this by myself. And in the past, I kind of organized things and then pulled people in for help. And this time it was like, here's the seed. We've already done before. Here's the seed. Please help me, guys. And everybody kind of jumped in. Clayton, am I missing something though? That's kind of how I look at it.
No, I was genuinely curious because I didn't know the full backstory either.
That's it. I've just been really stressed. I've been stressed doing a whole bunch of things.
I actually thought you had forgotten all about it, Ed. I forgot.
And I think, and we'll go into the script, and I'll just expand on this for people outside. I think a lot of the indie creators are busy. A lot of us are crazy. We're always running our own stuff. How to Draw Comics is working on 3-4 different things, bouncing around things and trying to get things to happen. HTDC, Clayton, you got like 5 different things going on. You're killing it over there. And then Ed's like, he's like the king of courses. Like he's the course king. And you're even putting out a course right now about not to go off topic, but a course about making courses. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, so it's great. Everyone's got something to do. And then Rick,
I got nothing to do. I'm scratching my ass. I'm scratching my ass. That's what I'm doing.
Wait.
But anyway,
before you
go ahead, Gerald,
actually,
before I make my.
When you're talking about that seed, I think it was planted actually the last slam, the Winter Slam. It started there, and I think it blossomed. And I'm going to give shout out. I'm going to give props to the 2-time slam winner, Victor Ruffino.
Yeah,
who's also a judge.
Yeah,
he's also a judge.
And he should be. I mean, he won back-to-back challenges. But I remember him talking to me. He said, "Hey, I'd like to talk to How to Draw Comics, Clayton, Ed, and he I think he reached out to Joe, and I kind of heard this through the grapevine, so it's become legend now. I heard that he sort of said, "Hey, why don't we put together something where it's kind of this partnership type thing, or not partnership, it's an association." And from there, I think that was kind of like maybe the seed that was planted way back then, and I think then it all came together when Ed had his revelation of like, gosh, what do I do? And that seed already blossomed here. So here we are today.
Yeah, Victor had reached out to me a little bit after, because we were talking about the prizes he's won and different things. And then we were like, well, where do you see yourself going in the future with this? And he's like, I'd actually like to be involved in this. And I was like, I'd love you to be involved in this. And then we started bouncing ideas back and forth, but that was a few months back, right? And then I moved, and there was a few different things going on. And so when we started this back up again, and this is not Italian, but rather the seed. Right away I was starting to pull people into this. Yeah, That's
Ed flexing. Putting on his flex.
That's his chest muscles just going.
There you go. I was pulling people into it, and Victor's ideas, and then like I've been wanting to work with Joe. I'm going this way and up. Our How to Draw Comics crew, we've done so many things together, but I know when I look at other people here, I see a lot of skills, right? I see a lot of skills that I wanted to tap into, and I needed you guys, and I appreciate everybody stepping forward, even in just this launch video and stuff.
I also think it's healthy. To have different people coming in and out to make it to keep making it interesting, so it doesn't just go and become the same old kind of thing in the competitions. Because Joe came in with a lot of new stuff and a lot of new ideas.
Yeah,
Victor did the same, and it helped make this one different as well, which has always been our goal, to make each competition different.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So it's always good to have new people.
Just to make it clear, we're almost at 30 minutes. We want to make sure that we're going into the information. If you're coming in now and like, hey, I want to know information about this slam, we're going to probably start kind of rolling.
I think Clayton wanted to say something.
Potatoes. Clayton, go ahead.
I was just going to say real quick, Comics Cast and How to Draw Comics have been looking for a way to work together for a while. So this is the perfect opportunity to collaborate, I think.
Yeah.
And it's great that we've managed to hook it all up.
Yep.
Right. I mean, this is a natural progression of things to come. One of the things, and I'll just go ahead and say this part because it's not. I loved the challenges. One of the things I always wanted to lead into my own competitions was a way that would say, okay, like a cooking contest, whatever it is, right? It's always like, you're going to end up with a job after this. And I think that's like one of the key things. I want people to compete for that. So I'd love to see more of that. I'm going to throw, even though our magazine isn't published yet, I'm still looking at getting artists on it. So that's one of the key things. We'll talk more about it. But I'd love to see some more indie creators using stuff like this to reach out and be like, hey, I loved your panels. How do we get these challenges out there for people to see that are maybe outside of, even if it's a large bubble, that How to Draw Comics bubble. So I want to make sure, the guys that are looking for work, that's where you should be looking. You should be looking at this competition. So it was a natural progression for us to say, hey, how do we maybe create a platform for people to get on and show their progression, show their artwork as they're building it for the competition, things like that, to sort of highlight them as they're working. And then you guys can work some of the other elements. So that's one of the key things. And I think, and just to all transparency, I think the biggest thing between Clayton and I is always, hey, share on your sites, let's talk to each other, highlight people. But the biggest things, let's not step on each other's toes. And I think we've always been respectful of that. Both ways. I'll speak for both of us. I think we've been respectful on that. So no concerns there. And this is a natural progression, and we'll see where we go from here. Keep building that relationship, which is always great. But officially, this is not one company. This is just two people working together outside of any official legal contractual obligations.
Sure.
It's a crossover.
It's a crossover between Marvel and DC.
Let's get that legalese out of there. But I think
we'll end up with a Batman Wolverine crossover, and we'll be happy.
That's next slam. Next slam is going to be.
What is that character's name? I don't remember.
Batterine. The Batterine challenge. Yeah.
Okay. So talking about, let's get back to the script. Okay. So Ed created the bat signal. He brought us all in. Thank you for Facebook Messenger. We are not backed by Facebook in any way. So that came in. It was very clean. We all were excited about being there. We ended up getting to the script. Ed was talking about, hey, we're going to do something that's dialogue driven. I said, okay, this is great, because one of the things that people look for in sequential work is the ability to go from people just having a conversation, literally in like a coffee shop, to let's get some sort of action. And Rick was really great in sort of fine tuning the thought process. We developed the initial script. It was pretty heavy, a little bit heavy on the screen direction, because I come from a video background, so that's very heavy on a lot of that. So we pulled back on a little bit of the too structured way of saying, hey, we want to see this, this, and this. We got to get elements that allow people to be creative in how they interpret the script. So we weren't too focused on what camera angle, close, medium. It's all interpreted to the contestant, the person who's drawing it. So that was interesting, and that was a good fix on Rick. And then so it's really about getting that dialogue, and I think that was your guidance, Rick, Ed, and thankfully we didn't have to rewrite everything. So what was it? Was it Victor that drew the thing in like 2 hours?
Victor Photoshop photobashed everything together in like 2 hours, and it looks so good. It just
so we were able to say, okay, well, my script needs to get edited because now we can see it on paper. So we made some tweaks to make sure it all worked, just so that it was as effective as possible of a tool to challenge somebody, so that they could make a way where they could have their space for word bubbles. They don't get hit on that sort of stuff, and they can still continue to tell a really compelling story. As compelling as the story that I wrote. I mean, it's really just fun.
So give us a brief overlay of that story. Like we already know what's the title again?
It is For Love and Hunger, or Love and Hunger.
Which could be confused with
but it's based on Thor?
Love and Hunger. You gotta say Thor, Love it. It's like Love and Thunder, except it's Love and Hunger.
Why don't we have this?
It's a play on words.
You need to help me.
Yeah.
Jesus, let me just work this. This is what I'm going to do for now on. I'll just work the comments. I won't run the show.
No. Hey, it's your show. You said from the start that you'll be in charge. So now you're in charge.
First off, I never said that I would be in charge. That was you. Let's just nip that in the bud.
Tomato.
Hello, Jedi, by the way.
So the script. Let's talk about the script. So it's a script with 3 characters in it. If you really want to talk about the waitress, there's maybe 4 in the initial page, right? So you've got Hercules, you've got Mighty Thor, and Thor. And
for
those
who don't know the difference between those,
those that don't know the difference between Mighty those, Thor not to sound like a smart butt, but there's Google. So the Mighty Thor and Thor, right? So you're going to have a chance to draw 2 different versions. They're both going to be in the new movie coming out, which is exciting. You can go off of any character design you want to. It doesn't have to necessarily be the movie version or whatever. So Mighty Thor is Jane Foster, who is the love interest of Thor, who ends up, it's really kind of a dynamic character. Mighty Thor is very interesting. She sacrifices her own health to be able to use this power. So that's sort of the short form of Mighty Thor. And coming from somebody who challenges the mainstream for what they create, I think Mighty Thor is a really good example of how to do it right. She did a lot of that. Character is very interesting to me. Mm-hmm. So she sacrifices a lot to be able to use that power. So this is sort of a tongue-in-cheek sort of play on a little bit of past things with the movies where we've had like a out of shape the dude Thor who was a little bit fat, who looked like the dude from Big Lebowski. And now he's fit. So there's some jokes from Hercules, a little bit of wordplay about strength and who's the strongest. And then they're attacked by some of their key villains, who now off the top of my head, I would need to look at the script.
Alphys and Blastar.
Yeah. So it's pretty dynamic. It gives you a chance on the second page after they have their dialogue back and forth. And I look forward to you guys looking at the script and sort of their test of might. In this like little diner, which is just fun for that interaction. Gives the artist a chance to sort of play and learn how to do dialogue in a closed space, how to move the camera around on your own, how to make it look dynamic, and then it's really good for your portfolio to show people to say, hey, how did I do a very static scene and make it interesting? So there's the challenge there, and then the second page is really just 2 panels. And in a lot of ways, however you want to do it, you could turn this into a really dynamic splash page. So the second page should be fun. And then the first page will be, hey, how do we get those techniques in there? And, and the great thing is it's a growing, living community. So you can ask questions as you build it. So I think it was a good idea from Ed. And then I just sort of threw together a pretty solid script that was fun and fit the bill for how do you place word balloons.
Carol?
Carol?
I was going to say that what you guys came up, because I came in late. A lot of this stuff, the foundation was already there. So I got to see the script a little bit later on. What I like about this, and I call it the evolution of Sequential Summer Slam. We're seeing new challenges that are being incorporated in here. But what's really cool about this one that I totally dig and love is because not only are we going to think about the word bubble placements and things like that, is the the injection of humor. There's going to be a humor. I mean, when you read this, that it's one thing to interpret body language and have a word bubble to make sure that you have enough space for all that stuff, but there's going to be another whole context in there. I think as up and coming comic illustrators, we graduate from doing pinups and doing sequentials, but we're so wrapped up in doing those action scenes, and all too often is like some of our best comics that we've read have dialogues, sequences. And my favorite ones I remember reading in the 80s were like the Justice League International. We had Kevin Maguire, I think that's his name, but he did. There was so much humor that was put into it. Simple panels, but in order to make you laugh out loud, literally, I read this script and I was like going, this is genius. It gives an opportunity for you not only to construct a story sequentially, but to actually think about the word bubbles, but there's so much room for you to add humor into it. And everything from like the back and forth, the witty banter to like, where the hammers and Thor, where they're going to be placed. There's room for all sorts of funny expressions. And that's, Clayton's been putting up a lot of stuff about facial expressions. And I've seen a lot of those things. I think this is a great opportunity. Go to Clayton's tutorials, check them out, see how you can incorporate those great expressions, because you may look at a static dialogue panel and you can make it so interesting by just doing those little things. And I think this is a great progression. It's almost like Clayton was thinking, I got to get all this stuff out because it's going to be relevant. It's going to be essential for what we're going to be doing for this. So I think that's really cool. So remember, bring your humor game, not only your action game. You got to bring some humor, body language, and to think about those dialogue boxes.
Clayton is always one step ahead.
Definitely.
I think when I look back at the movies and you think of the shawarma scenes, the sitting around in restaurant scenes and stuff like that, this is the opportunity here to draw that, right? And exactly. I'm going to second or third Clayton's recent courses about facial expressions and stuff like that. I was just working on it the other day. Just sitting there, drawing characters like Stoneface versus like expressive and reactive and all this kind of stuff, it's just so important, right? And that's how you flex as an artist, right? This is a real big chance to flex without massive line of actions and stuff like that, with just subtle little eyebrow raises, right?
Yep. It's a game changer for your drawing to be able to introduce expression to your character, faces especially, and hands. Hands are also really expressive. These are one of the key points of focus that we hook onto when we're talking to people in real life. So definitely the same applies in a comic book. Think about it. If there's a head in a comic book panel, where does your eyes go? Does it go to the background? Does it go to the rest of the body? It goes straight to the face because we want to get a read on those characters. Yeah. And so if you're able to draw expressive faces instead of just the standard, I don't know what you would call it, just the standard default face with no expression at all, it's hard to connect on an emotional level to those faces.
Stoic.
Resting bitch face.
Check it out.
No, wait.
RBF.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've seen a lot of artists also forget that even though there's word balloons, you still have to remember, or you really still have to remember to draw all those gestures and all those facial expressions.
Right. Yeah.
And this script will really help push that forth. That hey, just because there's word balloons that tells a story, you still have to tell that story with your art. So it's not.
Yeah, let's just do a little bit of a pushback here from the devil's advocate. All right, so you're doing a challenging challenge, right? So it's worthy of doing. So the question is, what happens if you are an average to below average artist? You know you have work to do, but you want to do the challenge, and you know, hey, I'm going to get blown away by some guys who are just super slick, right? But I need to do this because this is going to make me grow, and I need to get that feedback. What would you guys say to those guys that are sort of like, hey, I'm aware I'm not gonna be the top guy, but I have to, like, this is a good challenge for me to do.
Well, first off, that what you just said there is the most important step in my view, that you accept that you might not win. but you want to do it anyways, that you want to have fun with it anyways. That's the first step of starting out and becoming better. After all, accepting that you're not gonna win at hey Phil, at the first go, right? And a lot of people actually can't do that. They think, right. Oh, I shouldn't join because I'm too bad, I get knocked down. We've seen that in so many comments over the years. Mm-hmm. And we always try to say that it doesn't matter, because we don't necessarily pick the most absolute fantastic, most perfect choice for a winner if we see something else that has the same potential, but it's just the experience level that's different, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So that's what we try to tell people, that everybody has the same chance, and everybody, if you're willing to learn from it and continue to grow, then if you don't win this year, maybe you'll come back and win the next year.
I'm going to add to what Rick is saying here too, is like, we've got to understand what winning means, right? Mm-hmm. Like, is first place winning? Sure. That's an easy answer, right? But I'm going to tell you, from first place all the way through, every single one of those entrants have messaged us, the admin, and said, thank you so much for the feedback. Wow, that feedback really blew my mind. Whoa, that I didn't even think of it that way, or whatever. So just you win first by completing the assignment, to know that there's a deadline and you can get something done and enter it in. That's a win. That's a win on you. That's a win on you as an entrant, right? Like that you, as an artist, you've accomplished, right? The second win is really getting a lot of feedback from a panel of judges, and they're looking at your piece and saying, bang, bang, work on this, do this and that. That's also a massive win. So whether you win a cash prize or not, yeah, hey, listen, cash is good for everybody and stuff like that. But I'll tell you this: if you ask any of the top winners from the past, I guarantee all of them would say, I'd rather the feedback than the cash.
Let's ask Cheryl, because did you feel like when you were in your first contest, did you feel like you lost in any way?
Yes, I did feel like I lost.
No,
but joking aside, I will concur with what Ed and Rick said, is that winning is in participating. Winning is actually getting to the finish line. Winning is actually, it's the community, because once you get to see what other people are doing, it is so mind-blowing to me to actually see how so many people can interpret the same script and come up with these, and it forces you to think differently. And I think, like I keep on going to keep on harping on this, it's this evolution that I'm seeing. The scripts and the slams are evolving, and I'm going to tell the game that you're going to have to bring to this one. I don't want to intimidate anybody, but when you actually have to do it yourself, you realize just how talented, really good artists that can tell a good sequential storytelling is that.
If anything, it gives you a wake-up call.
Yeah,
hey,
it gives respect.
Solid, but I need to do more sequentials.
Yeah, and then when you look at it, we're talking about word bubbles. Even though there isn't an optional lettering part of it, it's going to force you to think not only those great camera angles, but you got to think about the word bubble as being a part of the panel, and the tails of the actual word bubbles make a difference, because they add to it in terms of telling a sequential, leading your eye around. True masters can even use the word bubble, good lettering, to actually make an even stronger sequential. So that's what you got to bring.
Let me bring in what Corey said, because I'm going to bring this up, and I think it's important. He's kind of bringing a little fire, but I think it's important to say. I don't think restaurant scenes are that challenging unless it's some sort of dramatic fight with gunfire and punch up, but characters sitting and eating. I don't know. It seems easy and boring. I think this is a good point to kind of bring up. It's not a challenge.
It's hard. It is so hard.
It may not be a challenge for him.
That's
it may
a hard
be something that's important to him. Like, you guys are putting together some really fire books. I mean, obviously. But the challenge may be to somebody else to be able to put that together and make it interesting to look at.
It's hard.
Interesting to read or watch.
That's
that's the challenge.
As Death comments above, then the challenge is to make it exciting.
Yep.
I mean, it's basically that simple. That's the job. If it doesn't look exciting on paper, then it's the writer, then it's the artist's job to make it exciting.
Yeah, Rick. I mean, and again, looking at it from an editor's point of view, and this is me putting my editor's hat on. I'm not an editor or whatever, but if you have someone, it's like, well, I just don't want to do stuff like that. All right, well, I'm going to need you to be versatile enough to do whatever it is that I'm paying you to do. So maybe this is just the, oh shit, I guess I got to do the boring stuff too portfolio piece, but you got to make it look good, right?
Well, it's making the restaurant scene interesting. That's the challenging part. Mm-hmm. I agree with both points. I think what Corey is talking about is when you're dealing with an action scenes, there's other elements that comes into it. One, you're typically dealing with more dynamic poses, more dramatic foreshortening, an increased level of energy that needs to be represented in that panel. That can be really tough to compose. But the coffee restaurant scene is also challenging for its own points. I also wanted to expand on why it's important to enter the competition. Firstly, you've got to be in it to win it. And secondly, when it comes to, I'm sure we've all experienced this before, we tell ourselves, you know what, this week I'm going to draw that comic book page. I know that I've got to do it for practice. I know that I've got to get the experience, and it never ends up happening. And the reason for that is something gets in the way, or we succumb to procrastination, or we succumb to resistance. And those things pop up for us all the time, even when we've got a comic book to actually work on. When you go to competition where you have to meet a deadline and there's a specific script that you've got to follow, this is the perfect opportunity to really work towards something. This is essentially what you get out of going to school, which is assignments. Okay, so this is your assignment, gives you the perfect excuse. It gives you a roadmap to go down so that by the end of whenever this competition is due in, which I'm sure Ed and Joe will expand on, you've got a comic book page sitting right there in front of you that has brought you through a variety of different challenges, that has tested your current skill set. And what's the best part? You get that feedback at the end, which don't underestimate it. That is by far the most important, especially right now in this current era where there is a general reluctance to receive feedback. We want to be told that our work is great and brilliant and good. Unfortunately, that is an antidote to the amount to which your work is suffering. If you really want to get better and you want to increase that skill set, you need feedback. There's actually no other way to get good. On a consistent basis, just ask Corey. I'm sending him over work to ask him what he thinks of it, because I know that I can't tell. My opinion does not mean a thing. It counts for zero when it comes to my own work. You've got to have that other set of eyes. When you're dealing with comic book instructors and fellow comic book artists, your peers, they're the best people that can give you an honest opinion and perspective on the current level of ability that you're able to execute.
There's a few points that I just wanted to jump in on. I think for beginners, I want to encourage them to enter. I think it's important for all skill levels to enter. Just know that it's okay to stay a little bit within your wheelhouse. If your style is something like Adventure Time, stay consistent within that style. Simplify if you need, and just work the script according to your skill level. So don't be discouraged that you have to render and hatch out and color everything out the wazoo or anything like that. Tackle what you need to do to grow, and we'll see it in the pages, right? I think that's really important for beginners. So don't get phased at all. We got your back. When it comes to what Gerald said earlier, I think it's really important. In my course, How to Make Comics, I actually cover not just panel flow, but how to direct the eye and stuff, and word bubbles and tails and all that is part of that. That's part of the strategy that you can use, right? And so if somebody really wants to get slick, they're going to tap into that and they're going to use that to their advantage. Sure, they can use it as blanks and just leave open spots and stuff like that. But to step up your game, think of that bubble placement, the wordage, and how it's going to bring that eye through that page, right? As per Corey's thing about restaurants maybe not being the most exciting thing. He's right. But you've got to understand, unless I always look, and this is what I talked about in my course, was comics are much like music, right? You've got to have certain beats and certain tempos as you're designing a book. And if you are, all you're doing is a heavy metal thrasher, no, you're going to fatigue the reader.
Right.
There's a lot of fatigue with splash after splash after splash, right? So you want to make a symphony. You want to have those up and down, the crescendo. You want to build up to something. And you can't build up to something if you're already up there. And so a page like this, where we're sitting in a restaurant, everything's calm, there's a little bit of banter, there's a little bit of movement in that flow, and then all of a sudden, boom, it comes up, right? As an artist, like I said, same with music, I look at that flow the same way. You've got to be able to master your flow and then pop it when you need it, because it's that pop that has effect. Without that, if you're always popping, you lose your effect.
All right. So before we go into the next segment, we'll talk about some of the old, go through some of the old contestants.
Sure. I got them up on screen here.
I will ask this one quick question and see if anyone in here can answer this question. And this will answer whether or not a diner scene has impact, right? So one question: what does Samuel Jackson's wallet have written on it?
Oh, good question.
I can't remember. Is it motherfucker? Is it motherfucker?
It says badass motherfucker.
Badass motherfucker.
I knew that.
Yeah. Close enough.
That is an iconic scene that was done inside.
And Honey Bunny Boo Boo, or whatever it was, that's those scenes in the diners were huge, right?
I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, true. Yeah, that's a really good point.
All right. Okay. Go ahead, Ed. Take it away. Let's you and Rick can sort of roll the show. Let me move this graphic because everyone's got.
Let's just turn off those graphics. Let's turn off those captions.
And I'll get out of.
Here, let's just.
Okay, so in the past we've had 4 different contests. I pulled up some entries from some of them. A lot of those that have entered can recognize this. This one I've got up here is a double page spread of Black Widow, right? Yep. And this one's from Rufino, and it was this Rick? You remind me. Was this the winner?
Yeah.
And it's slamming, right? Like there's so much awesomeness going on, but even with this awesomeness, we had feedback. There was things we didn't like. There was repositioning of certain panels and flow, right? There was little nudges that we would give them and say, this could be better. This could be better, right?
Yeah. I believe we had Silverbacks to help us with judging these. Brian Silverbacks, right?
Yeah, we had Brian. We had a couple others, I think. I can't remember who it was. But you can look through these entries here and see the various skill levels. It's really important to note that not every one of these are colored. Some are traditional. The skill levels, here's something like a Kim Possible kind of vibe to it and stuff, right? And all of them won. All of them got feedback. All of them entered 2 pages and just blew our minds, and we had tons of fun with it, right?
Like this one, that one you got right there. That was the quote unquote weirdest one. It took us some time to really critique it, but we ended up liking it because it was so different, and it still told the story, but in a way that we hadn't really thought of was possible to do it that way. Mm-hmm. It was thinking out of the box, and I remember we liked it after we had gone through it a little bit.
Absolutely. And you can see this one, it wasn't finished. We loved it, but you could see from concept, like from the sketch stage into, the first page was finished here and stuff like that. We usually don't take half-finished entries, but sometimes what we might deem as finished is up to you. Like I said, we don't need colored entries. That's not what's going to win all the time, right? Just a really well-structured page will do well. Yeah. Okay, so that was the Black Widow one. Our first one here was Spidey. And I don't know if the people can view it because it's kind of small, but like the expression on these faces, the movement, this was just a 1-page entry. And look at the difference in styles of these artists, right? Everybody's coming with something different. Yeah, this is amazing stuff. And we were all like, this is kind of more like a Gorillas page, right? You guys know the group, the Gorillas and stuff, right? So you can choose the style that works for you, and importantly, that you can stay consistent with throughout the entire assignment, right? Don't come heavy rendering at first, hatching the shit out of it like it's the 90s, and then by the end you're simplified animation or something like that.
Yeah.
Consistent. This is something that we gave people advice on before.
I think that's always been our the flow and consistency have been our two major biggest judgings that we focus mostly on.
Yeah,
because those two are the most important things, at least.
I just think it's amazing seeing different people's take on this script. In some ways, it's so similar, right? We've got X amount of panels, but the style choices, the flow choices, it really comes into it. It's really important to express yourself, right?
Well, just as an artist looking in, like one of the things that I learned from, like, because I did this one, was I did too much. Like I did digital colors and inks and everything else. Mm-hmm. And my strength at the time was pencils. So staying within your strength and then finishing a sequence is important. And that's the same thing as an editor would say. It's like, why did you do all these things? The only thing you're good at is word bubbles. I'll hire you for word bubbles, but everything else sucks. You know, like maybe that might be what the feedback is, right? So maybe your pencils are great, but they can't see it because you did all this other stuff on top of it or whatever it is. So
it's hard because this is a contest, but it's also a learning experience.
Yeah.
So for example, if somebody's pencils are slamming, but they're weak on inks or finishing or whatever it is, sure, you could submit the pencils and that might be your stronger piece. But what if you want to be the full meal deal? What if your goal is to put out your entire book on your own? Well, then you want some feedback on the colors as well, right? Yeah. And then you want this and that. So I think for each entry, for each artist that's entering and stuff like that, look to what you're trying to get out of this, and then, you know, push yourself. So take on bite-size amounts in pushing yourself and everything, right? But really, like, just do that little bit past your comfort area. You don't always have to do. So I'm disagreeing with Joe to an extent, but not to a massive extent. I'm just saying you don't always have to only stay within your comfort zone, depending on what your goals want to be.
Because we judges most likely knows your art style and can tell if you pushed yourself or not.
Yep.
I think.
Again, this is your barbecue. I'm just eating on it. So I mean, however you guys want to do it, it's all good.
So we can tell if you're most likely, if you're a regular on our Facebook page, that you pushed yourself. We can usually tell, and we also take that into consideration when we judge.
Yeah, I gotta say, like, most of the entries, all of the entries are part of our How to Draw Comics Facebook group. But most of the entries are either myself or Clayton's students. They've taken one or more of our courses and stuff. And so we recognize the art. Rick's had them on the Discord channel or something like that. There's been a lot of interchange, exchange and stuff like that. We know it. We set the personality aside, as in, like, often I'm not looking at the names. I don't care about that. But the art, I definitely recognize. And I can look for growth. I look for somebody pushing themselves on something, right? And
it's kind of what we did. It's kind of what we did with Victor. Even though he's a 2-time winner, we really tried to find a reason for him not to win 2 times. But he did have that. he did have that jump that we were looking for.
Right.
Yeah. He grew.
Yeah. And that's why we forced him to be a judge this time, so he can't win for the third time.
He grew because of his drive as an artist. That was very clear, right? He grew because of the feedback that he got. But really, I'm going to say a lot of the growth was just getting shit done. You know, really feeling accomplished. And if you ask him and anybody who's entered, afterwards they're like, oh, I feel so good that I did it, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you can see with these entries, and there was another challenge that we had with the turtles. There's a lot of amazing entries, but there's a lot of skill levels in there, and we love it all. We take, let's call it 5 minutes for each entry, depending on how many entries or something like that. But roughly, you've got 5 people taking 5 minutes on your entry, and even sometimes more. Occasionally, we pulled entries aside or something like that, and just did a one-on-one with them, and just said, "Hey, listen, I'm going to invest some more time in this because I think I want to talk about this one more."
Yeah, I've done that with with all of them. I know you've done a few times as well when you've had the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, we just because the competition is over, guys, doesn't mean that me, Ed, and Clayton in particular with the group stops wanting to give you feedback. It's not out of sight, out of mind for us, because we want to help you and help you to progress. And if you come to us and ask for help and or a more focused critique that we can give in those 5 minutes, we'll grab you into a StreamYard and have a one-on-one if we got the time, because all 3 of us are burning enough to do this that we will try to take the time when we can, right?
Right.
Absolutely. So we've already talked a lot about the reward of getting feedback and everything, but Joe, I want to hear what you're also offering into this, because we've got some cash rewards for 1st, 2nd, and 3rd place and stuff. We've got rewards of getting video feedback and all of that. But Joe and Comic Cast added something special to this one.
Okay, so last year we did the $100 for the winner, right? And I think I want to say there was a cash prize that was added to that. But yeah, we did.
Yeah, we usually stack some of the cash prizes and different things.
A little bit of stack, and I knew then I was like, hey, I want to really. At the end of the day, we need to look at something that's like maybe not the top, but we'll find somebody who's in like the top 10 and say, you're going to be. Let's get you a contract. Let's get you some pages to do. For us, what the Comics Cast did was we're going to do through us, our magazine, the Indieverse magazine that's being produced, the next 5 pages that every magazine has 5-page comic that goes with it. It's an ongoing series. We'll have a 5-page contract, $100 per page contract to do the sequentials for those pages. So that's what we're bringing to the table: $100 for the top prize, and then also a $500 contract, basically for 5 pages to do the sequentials.
That's not That's not the first prize. That's a special Comics Cast chosen one.
Yeah, so that'll be a chosen one, because there's some different things that go into it, right? It could be, somebody who is really great, wins first prize, but they're heavy on. They've already got work. They've got plenty of work. So I want the flexibility to be able to pick somebody who's at the top of their game. They're really pushing it, but also the flexibility to find somebody who's outside of the established Indieverse or whatever it is, the indie comic scene, that's looking at getting their first sequential pages beyond 1 or 2 pages.
Yeah, so that's an awesome prize, man. That's
awesome.
That's what people are looking for, right? I'm also going to say, so we've got cash prizes for different tiers and stuff. We've got Joe's 5-page prize, paid 5-page prize. It's 5 pages? Yeah, I think it's 5 pages.
5 pages, yeah.
And then between myself and Clayton as well, Clayton, you were offering something as well, right?
Was I offering the mentoring?
No, well, we were both offering courses. We were going to give out free.
You always offer those, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Free courses to certain select people, but really, like the top 2 or 3, we found that they kind of don't need many of the courses. Like there might be a couple, like for example, my How to Make Comics course, they might benefit from it, but they've got strong fundamentals in anatomy and all these different things. So we usually look at giving out courses to 4th and on type of thing. We have kind of a clear that way. Yeah. So there's a lot of benefits to joining something like this. As I've said about 1,000 times already in this live cast, is like the accomplishment of doing and getting feedback from the community and then from the judges is probably the biggest thing. But if you can get some cash, if you can get a contract, if you can get some free courses, why not? It's extra like food fodder for the fire. Just let it burn on you, right? Let it get into it. Yeah.
Yep. So let's talk about the rules a little bit, because I think one of the things that was really nice is that we're coming up on, we're right over an hour, so we've tapped over a little bit. But let's go over the rules and then clarify some questions, give people a chance to ask some questions that maybe have done the challenge before, maybe some concerns about previous.
Wait, your cat turned into a human being. What the?
Some previous challenges that people have done, right? So yeah, let's talk about the rules. I think Rick's got that, and then we'll kind of talk about that a little bit and to clarify some rules. And again, if you're watching or in the future you have some questions on rules, just go to that post on how to draw and ask the questions. But we should clarify them here. And before we get started, I just wanted to say that I think it was really great. Ed and everybody was like, "Hey, let's look at how we can improve, develop, improve every year, get better." And it was definitely a open forum for discussion on how to improve. And that's just better for everybody. And having that whole ability to look at things and see how do we make it better is, not everybody can do that. So
Rick, just a little bit on the rules and stuff like that. Anything different than last year? What are some of the basics?
Yeah.
The only different is the word balloons that we spoke of. The proper space for them and consideration. But they don't need to be added. I think that's the only extra thing we have. Other than that, it has to be content made specifically for the contest. And finished work is not required. We've been over that.
Yeah,
it's sure, and you need to have drawn like the pencils, all of the pencils.
Yeah.
You can team up, but you can't take a piece and from someone else and photobatch it in, even though it's just background.
Yeah.
Everything has to be made by you.
Okay.
Yeah, no dragging photos into it.
Yeah, right? No screen caps, no 3D added. I mean, 3D is allowed for reference, but it has to be obvious that you drew from the reference.
Yeah. So did you say you can team up?
Yeah. We always said that, where one does colors, one does
right.
Our first Spider-Man winner was a team up.
So what happens if they win? And they've teamed
figure
up.
out the division of the prizes for themselves.
They figure out the prizes. Then that's not on us.
Yeah, they gotta fight it out with Michael Jackson beat it.
But those
hands tied together with knives. Yeah.
Those are the basically five rules we have, and we have some.
What was the some of the main questions that came up last year that had to be clarified? Maybe.
Like everybody asked, can I join? Yes.
Well, the answer to that is yes. You can join.
Yeah. And our criteria for judging, we haven't really 100% put that in for this round, but
we're working on it.
Getting there. Yeah.
We're trying to get with the judging before. We weren't really disclosing, like in our critiques, we would give feedback of how and why we were judging certain things, but we're going to put a more structured structure in for the judging so that people would feel more confident in saying, okay, these are the points for flow, this is the points for style, this is the points, and it'll help the judges to be able to communicate and compare a little bit better, and it'll help the entrants as well and say, okay, well, now I realize that I hit on these certain points and I need to work on others. Gerald?
And I'd also add that I think everybody that was involved in sort of the back scenes is looking forward to being assisted in this, right? So making sure everybody gets feedback and just in case nothing falls through the cracks. I think everybody's committed to that. So just sort of seeing, hey, maybe things could get better. Like how do we fix any issues that we may have had in the past?
Yeah.
So however I can help or anybody else can help, I'm sure we'll assist if that's just a second set of eyes on something it's always something there. So sorry, Gerald, you were going to say something.
Oh no. I think that what Ed said, I think was important. He said this a little bit earlier. I think that if the judging was approached from a editorial standpoint versus an opinion standpoint, like if you went to a con and there was the editor in chief from DC Comics, Image Comics, Boom Studios, it could be any of them, but to look at it from an editorial standpoint, and I think that maybe through the evolution the progression as we move to the deadline, which I believe, when is the deadline, Rick? Was it specified?
Middle of August.
5th of August.
Yeah. So like that's important to note, is that I think is having not necessarily a checkbox, but it's sort of like, hey, did you execute these really basic things? Because I remember with the Omega one, one of the things that the Omega Supreme, Omega Red, Ed, one of his first things he says, hey, was there anything here to say that this was in Russia? You could just do any little things. And I think if that, from an editor standpoint, it's like if you failed on that first part of it, that's like that's like grounds for you didn't. The editor would say you didn't read the script. You failed because you failed to like meet this objective. So I think these are important things. Is that there's room for creative liberty, creative interpretation, to allow you to sing. Like your stuff can just look so awesome, but there should be a nice fence, a nice parameter that you have to operate within. So that shows that you have the sensitivity, you have the perseverance, you have the knowledge to look at the script and interpret it, and then still do something really phenomenal. And I think that's what people need to really consider. When it's not really like you got to do rule. It's more about just being very cognizant of what the script is asking for.
I got a last thing with the frequently asked questions.
Okay, good.
For the first time, also we've decided to collect every info and script, as you probably already know, on a Google Drive, and also we've decided to all submissions is going to be sent to a special created email address that's also in the frequency.
I agree.
And that's important that you have to put it there, because I'm the one that is in charge of that, and if you don't put it there, I'm not going to put you in the competition.
Thank goodness we have one of those now.
Yeah.
I had to say, for somebody that watches, that's great.
We lost so many times, and I remember I've been frustrated, and when we've talked about it in the past, and I completely agreed that had to change also for everybody's sake, because we don't want to miss out on people.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, my inbox was full of them.
When we look at the progression, not only have we progressed as a contest in scripts and pushing the contestants, pushing all the different levels of art that we're expecting, but as organizers, we've also grown, right? We've grown in how we're going to judge, how we receive entries, how we deal with prizes and all this, and partnerships and everything. So it's a great growth for all involved, and getting the community, getting it out on YouTube channels, promoting it and stuff like that. This is growth in every direction as independent creators, right? And this is why we're all here. We're all independent creators, and we're trying to grow our brands, our business, our art, our skills, our partnerships, and it's awesome. Guys, I think we're going to have to wrap this up though, right? Joe, was there one more thing you wanted to say? Oh, you got it on mute.
Unmute yourself, if you could.
I'm muted. Sorry, I've been sick, so coughing off camera. But yeah, that you can't beat that. That's the perfect way to end it. I want to say thank you to Clayton, Ed, and Rick for you guys, HTDC, coming up, hanging out with us over at Comics Cast, being able to promote your guys' party. This whole slam, and the fourth year. It's really, really incredible. So the fact that we can do that, we're all busy.
Thank you.
How can we all work together and find a way to make an opportunity for other people to grow and be better?
Right.
That's what we're all here to do, and then still put food on the table. So however we can help you guys in the future, I'm always looking for ways to work together as we keep growing and building and developing our own content. So it was a pleasure, guys. Thank you very much. And we'll talk soon. All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Bye.
Oh, we're good.